Oh, hey, I didn't realize you were already here, ready to get started. I'm still ironing. I just saw this fantastic fabric. It's a double border print, and I fell in love with it as the design, but then I thought, wait, what can we do with this? And of course, what do you do with double border prints? You put them around stuff. So I've got a fantastic tutorial today. I'm gonna show you how to wrap this with the print running in a direction you desire around the size or shape that you desire. I'm gonna teach you a little bit of that math. Yes, a little bit of the M word, but don't worry, I promise to follow it up with the big F word today. We are gonna have so much fun. That is right, we are gonna put this awesome gold fabric, this coordinate, we're gonna put it as an interior border as well. So you might be learning a couple of little techniques. Today is a strategy more than a project tutorial. Let's get started. Let's have some serious fun. The fabrics are all now pressed, including I have already done 4 1-inch strips. They were 1 inches raw by the width of the fabric, and I've pressed them right sides out, so they're basically finished. They're basically 1/2 inch now. They're gonna show a 1/4. And whenever you're using this for this interior 3-dimensional kind of piped binding or interior border, I should call it, if you go any larger than a 1-inch raw cut, over time it might start to waffle and do odd things. In this technique, it does not matter what size you are making. The way you make your border fit or onto the miter is all in the math of the size of the border. So right now, we're gonna make it super easy on everybody. We are gonna cut ourselves a 36-inch square out of the center. I pull 36 inches down this way after I've pressed it and cleaned up this other edge. I've already trimmed this down over here. Now I'm basically spot on at 36. Once it's on 36 inches, I'm gonna use one of the nice perpendicular lines, the 1-inch line, along the fold over here of my fabric, and then I'm going to deploy my cutting tool, my rotary cutter, make one slice through there, make sure it's cut clean, and now we have it 36 inches top to bottom. I'm calling it top to bottom because this has a direction to the print. So the next thing we're gonna do, while it's just like that, we're gonna fold it up. And I'm lining up, I'm visually making sure that this is both layers are folded over on top of each other. I can see both layers up here are folded on top of each other. And now I'm gonna measure down 18 inches all the way down. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my cut. I'm gonna begin my cut. I'm gonna start my cut all the way through here. I'm going to, without moving the rotary cutter, this is the trick, don't move your cutter. Now I can line this back up here. I'm back on that same fold. Let's extend it up a couple more inches so that the ruler goes all the way out the edge of the fabric. Double checking everything because I don't want to mess this up. This is technically like live TV. And here we go, all the way through. And I measured over 18 from the fold because I wanted 36. Put this back in my pocket in case we need it later. Let me know if I can't find it again, if you will. And here we go. Presto, fingers crossed. Hopefully we have ourselves a nice 36-inch square of our lightning bolt fabric. Terrific. Now, what do we need to know next? We need to know next the size of the border print. Here's our border print. We are ready to start discussing the calculations, and I'm gonna try to not make this very confusing, but you know me, I like to over-explain everything. That's my disclaimer. We simply need to know how much of our print design we want to use. I will count for the selvage because the selvage is going to give us that little extra wiggle room. So basically what I'm looking at here is I would like to use 13 inches of this print height-wise. We need to know that because we want to run this on the diagonal all the way through, and the way I put it on to make life easy, I'm basically going to double what I have height-wise past the length of the strip I'm putting it on. So if we had a 36-inch piece, I want to add 13 inches to one side, but I also need to add it to this other side because we're dealing with corners, right? So therefore, we're going to be adding 26 inches to the 36-inch piece of fabric, which makes 62 inches. So simply stated, however tall this is, you're going to add that to each corner to get the full maximum size that you need. I cut all my running yardage down to the 62 inches I needed based on the math we calculated together. I hope that was all smooth enough for you. Remember, do your own math based on your own sizes. Now, you're gonna need at least 2 rulers though. 24 inches would be great, 2 of them, because most fabric is printed roughly about 24 to 27 inches on the repeat. So I can get, if you don't understand repeat, I can basically get 24 inches. There's a little print all the way down here, the same gal. So I'm gonna use my ruler on top of her hair at 3/4 of an inch above. So I set that end way down there that you probably can't see. And I set my other end right here that you may be able to see at 3/4 of an inch. And that is gonna be my cut line. There's 2 ways of handling this. One of the easy ways to handle this, if you only actually have 1 ruler, is, I know this seems crazy, but you're cutting to the print, so just trust me on this. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna cut my 24 inches worth of ruler, or until I run out of mat on the table. So I'm gonna stop about there. I'm not sure where my mat ends up here. Oh, it's pretty close. Now that this line has been cut, however, and I'm right now mostly worried about the print side, I can now slide this ruler down. See, I can use that straight line. I haven't actually touched the cut side that's important to me. And so now I've lined the ruler back up to the line I had. Slice and sever as I go through there. Okay, that worked really good. And now as I slide this down, I'm gonna have to move it, which means things are gonna shift around. Now this is where we need that other ruler, and you have your choice. I want as much ruler along the edge I've already cut as possible. I have now 3/4 of an inch above this gal's hair here. I'm gonna take another ruler out, and I don't need to go too far, so I just happen to have one handy. First, my checkpoint needs to be there at 3/4 of an inch above the design distance. I'm gonna line these rulers up so there's no bump in there. So technically I could, even though I won't, cut right through that line. And then I'm gonna make sure this is lined up and everything is lined up again. And now I'm confident that I'm cutting through the design in as straight a line as possible. By the way, folks, don't cut it perfectly straight. If you cut it perfectly straight, you're going to then have to sew it on perfectly straight, and we're going to be adding in other pieces. Think about the pressure we create for ourselves with this silly kind of behavior, cutting things so accurately. No, I'm kidding. You should be accurate. You know, I just want to be fun here. That's what my new business card says, is maker of fun. So I am here to deliver another full helping of the F word, as I said this morning. No, it's terrible. All right. That cut was made through there, goofing off just long enough. Now, again, I have enough ruler versus fabric that I can see, and I can still see that she's at my 3/4 of an inch above her hairline in my ruler, that I can cut this through. Easy peasy, okay? So that's the third piece right there. Okay, that should be dialed in. And as I mentioned earlier, once those panel pieces or the border pieces are cut off, you have a lot of extra running yardage. So you can let this be aside for later. This, again, would be perfect binding because it has that same theme fabric that would go right around the edge. That's what I'll use mine for before I commit to anything else. Okay, so that was done. This is exciting. Are you ready to get sewing? I am, but one last thing we better do before we actually dive onto the sewing machine over here, and that is we should mark out our 13-inch markers. We have our pretty accurate measurement going on right now. If you're new to this technique, you might have wanted to give yourself extra length. We gave ourselves the 13 inches that was the height. So now my fabric is folded to make life easy. I'm coming down here. I'm gonna mark up at the top edge. This is where I'm gonna sew it in. This is my seam. And so I want it to be easy to get to. So I'm gonna make a little marker with a little fine tip Sharpie there. And then on the other side of that fabric, just the same, I'm marking it. And so I'm just putting little identifiers so I know where to start the seam. So now we have our main background, our panel. This could be your quilt top, this could be a pillowcase, it could be whatever you're doing, right? It doesn't have to be a solid piece of fabric. I also want to have nice and handy one of my strips. I'm going to start up at this top corner because that's the way the orientation is for my sewing machine. The folded edge points into the project. So raw edges on raw edges. I know we have enough extra, so I'm going to cheat by 1 inch past down that corner. And then I'm going to find that border print. I'm going to make sure that the orientation is correct. so that my stars, my city folds outward here. I'm gonna find one of those 13-inch marks that I had just made. That 13-inch mark, I want to start on the corner right where my centerpiece is, or within about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 of an inch. Our selvage gave us a little extra math, and yes, we're gonna sew through technically all 4 of these layers at once with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm kind of getting myself organized. A straight pin, some wonder clips would not kill us at this moment, okay? But as I come in here underneath the needle, I already have my edge guide in place. What we wanna do, we wanna start basically 1/4 of an inch in from the top corner of the center piece, because we're gonna make a union of 2 different directions at that 1/4 inch marker. So I'm 1/4 inch down from that top seam. And as a matter of fact, you can always not backstitch here, and you can trim your threads in case you want to sew through this area and then just trim back within a stitch or 2. That is actually often easier with all this bulk in here. I've done this several times. I'm hoping I'm accurate. If not, I will take my threads out and fix it. I know I'm longer than short, which is a good thing to be. And now I'm just going to feed these layers evenly through. Now I'm approaching this last corner. Here you see that last little corner in there, and the reason I also wanted to do all layers at once is so I only have 1 row of stitching, so nothing shows up later on. So I, in my mind, have marked this right here as my 1/4 inch stopping point. There's a little black thread I'm looking at there. You may or may not be able to see that, but I can. So when I hit that marker, I'm gonna backstitch and cut my threads so that I'm hoping that I have left a bit of a opening at that seam back in there so I can bring the other fabrics together. Woo, okay, so perfect. And I checked my marker, my 13 inches, my other mark was about here, which is perfect because remember we rounded up, which is exactly what I needed to do. And so I have the first piece on. I would open this up. You can see now I've got this awesome highlight trim piece in there between my border print. Now, what we want to do because of this highlight trim piece, this 3-dimensional piece, we're gonna go to the opposite side. So now I'm gonna come up here to the opposite side and I'm gonna put the top on next so that I can then finagle the gold strip in between the other gold strips and not have it go all the way into the seam. It's a cool trick. I'm gonna be showing you all of those steps as we go. Just a quick tip on the pressing. I am going to press after I've got both sides on. So a quick way I do this all the time is I'm setting my seam from the top. So I'm basically pressing while my fabrics are all still right sides together. And then I'm gonna put the iron in here, but because I have this 3-dimensional piece, I want my iron on top of my gold trim, my 3-dimensional piece, and now pressing my border print out, utilizing the weight of the trim to catch that and fold that out and over. I'm not going to worry too much about pressing into the corners right now because we do need to tend to that a little bit when we get into our miter. So there, I've got that all nice and pressed out both sides. I'm going to drop in this piece and then I'll be back to show you putting in the 4th piece and completing out these corners, and we're all done for the day. We are now ready to put that 4th side on, both the interior gold strip and the exterior. I, in the past, have put on the interior strip first. The reason we're sewing this on at the same time we're putting on the border print is as I press it open, I don't ever want to see the threads from putting on the interior strip because of the way it's technically top stitched on in that mode. So what I'm trying to say is if you're going to put your interior strips on first, use a very narrow or an 1/8 inch is even better seam allowance so that your threads never show up later on outside in the project. That's why I decided I wanted to put on the interior gold strip at the same time that I put on the exterior border. All we need to do is tend to those corners, really. Stop freaking out a little bit here, Rob. This is my side that's going to be running over for the moment. I'm going to pull this out of the way. You could pin it, you could wonder clip it, whatever you want. I just want to make sure that I have the travel I need through here. And because I'm going to trim these pieces later, I'm still allowing it to go an inch past. I have plenty because I have 44 inches of strip and 36 inches of runway. So that's perfect. I am now looking for my 13-inch mark we created earlier due to the width of my personal border print I'm using. So it's not always 13, it's based on the math. If you are tuning in today late, you better go back to the beginning to understand where that number 13 came from. And now I'm going to drop it into place on that corner right here, perfect. And then I'm going to go marching myself over to the sewing machine, keeping everything in line. But one more time I'm going to mention I am starting a 1/4 inch back from that mark, a 1/4 inch back from that mark there, so that I have a corner in there to make that go about, make that travel. And actually the start is more challenging than the end in a lot of ways. I can feel where I'm at. I'm gonna double check to look, set those stitches. And now it's business as usual. We're just gonna stitch this on. Okay, better slow down here. I'm coming into that corner. Let's point out what's going on. So I'm making sure I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance to come through here, so that now I can lay in that piece and this piece. And again, I'm gonna stop at my 1/4 inch from the very edge. There I am, back stitch again. And as I pull this out, I wanna go ahead and I'm inspecting all the edges to make sure that it's gonna work for me. And I think it is. So I'm gonna press this edge like I've shown you before. I wanna have all 4 edges pressed now and ready to go, because we're gonna use an ironing technique to set these corners. Coming in here, and I always get so excited. You know, when the fabric starts to flop open and it looks so beautiful, I just get so excited. What we wanna do, right sides up. I'm gonna prepare the line that I will then stitch. So I'm gonna move my edge guide out of the way right now before I have my hands full. You may want to have a couple of straight pins handy as well. I'm just lining up this edge first as I start to bring this edge together. So it's that same feel or that same look when you've mitered your binding. So I've got my beautiful 45 that just came together there. So my cityscape now goes around the corner like this. So I'm gonna grab the iron right now. Check this out. This is the magic. And I should say I'm pressing it right now. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not ironing it all over the place. I want to create a single line, okay? That is gonna be our sewing line. I'm going to grab a few straight pins now, and I'm going to come in here real quick, and I'm gonna straight pin this fabric together, but not to the ironing board. Because now, here's the trick. We're gonna go right sides together. I'm just gonna slide it into my sewing machine. And technically we are now doing what I call top stitching, but we are on right sides together. Come all the way back into that corner, please, so we're securing everything. Top stitch, back stitch, I'm trying to say. Now, I'm gonna watch that presser foot, just go right through that sewing line there. Okay, now, if all goes well, we have a beautiful mitered corner. If all hasn't gone well, we are one seam ripper away and repressing this from a beautiful mitered corner. And what is a beautiful mitered corner? Oh, this one's one. It doesn't have any ripples and nonsense along the edge. This is awesome. Make sure just the 2 extra leftover pieces, use a ruler probably to trim that down. We can give it a beautiful final pressing. And we have this awesome mitered corner that has turned out fabulous. Super simple. I'm actually going to do the other 3 corners right here, right now. Finished, I have all 4 corners on. It worked just as I expected. So I've got that beautiful border print going around my center panel. But I just wanted to take a moment today and share with you a great way to use these double border prints. No matter how wide they are, you can still miter the corners on just by adding a little bit of that mathematics technique. It works super simple. Now that I've done it both ways, I will recommend that you sew on your interior border strip first and then put on your exterior for your miter. It just makes makes all the management in the corners that much easier. You know me, I'm always experimenting and coming up with something fantastic to play with right here. Every Wednesday, this is the place to be for something fantastic and new, so please make sure you are subscribed. Hit the little bell to be notified. I don't want you to miss a moment of the fun. I'll be back real soon. I'm glad to see you're still there. Hey, if you insist on spending all day on YouTube, great with me. Please check out a few of my other videos. I think they're fantastic. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified. We'll see you next time for another helping of fun.